Okay, lesson 10, dividing by unit and non-unit fractions. So we're going to look at patterns we see when we divide by a fraction. Today's goals: I can divide a number by a non-unit fraction, a, b, by reasoning with the numerator and denominator, which are whole numbers. I can divide a number by a unit fraction, 1 over b, by reasoning with the denominator, which is a whole number. Okay, so make sure you have today's date, your I cans, and you're ready to move on. So we're going to talk a little bit about dividing by a whole number. This works better as an in-class activity, so we're just going to kind of skip to talk to about what's the big thing here. So if we take 12 and divide it by 3, we get 4. Why? Because we take 12 and break it up into groups of 3, which gives us 4 for an answer. Same is true if you take and divide by 4, you get 3 groups of 4. Divide by 6, you get 2 groups of 6. Okay, so when you look at it another way and you talk about 12 times 1/3, you get 4. Why do you get 4? Well, if you take 12 and you look at it as kind of the inverse here. We're taking 12 and we're multiplying it by 1/3 groups. Well, how many whole groups do we make out of that? We end up making 4, right? Because 12 1/3 is going to make 12 thirds, which is the same as 4. Same thing here. If you're taking 12 times 1/4, you're going to end up getting 3. So you can see how these two relate. And same thing here with multiplying by 1/6 as opposed to dividing by 6. You're taking this 12 and you're saying that there are 12 groups of 1/6. What does that make? Well, it makes 2 as the whole number here. And that's why these multiplying by a fraction is the same as dividing by the whole number. All right, let's talk about dividing by unit fractions. So to find the value of 6 divided by 1/2, Elena thought how many 1/2s are in 6 and drew this tape diagram. She's got 6 ones and made each of the ones into 2 pieces. Why does that work? Why is she correct in thinking this? Well, because this is saying if you take 6 and you divide it up into groups of 1/2, how many 1/2 groups are you going to make? 12, right? Because you're going to get 2 1/2s and 1 whole. 6 of those would make 12. Let's use that same reasoning here. What about 6 divided by 1/3? Well, if we take 6 and divide it into 1/3, we can see that we get 3 in each of those 1 whole. Well, so that we have 3 per 1, so 6 of those 3s would give us a total of 18. So there are 18 1/3s in 6. What about with 1/4? Same sort of thing here, right? You're going to get 4 1/4s in one of those. So you have 6, you make 24. Figure out this last one here. 6 divided by 1/6 would do what? Yeah, you should have known that that means that you're going to take and break this into 6 equal parts. All right, that should be pretty close to 6. 6. Yep, it's just a little wonky. In each one of those, you get 6, so you should have gotten 36 1/6 in 6. So what were some patterns in what we looked at before? Well, think about it. When we talked about the 1/2, there was 2 halves and 1 whole. So we basically did what? Yeah, we ended up just doubling the 6 because there were 2 1/2s for each whole. Same thing with the 1/3s. There were 3 1/3s per whole. So with 6, that made us 18. Same for the 1/4 and for the 1/6. What about using that to help us figure out these here? What about 6 divided by 1/8? Well, should know that there are 8 1/8 in one whole, so 6 1/8 would give us 48. How about 1/10? 6 divided by 1/10? Yeah, 60, right? 10 1/10 in one whole, so there are 60. How about 25ths in 6? Yeah, 150, right? Because there are 25 in 1, so 6 times 25 is 130. What about here? 6 divided by 1b. Well, we don't know. We know that there are b number of parts in one whole, so it's actually 6 times b. We could plug in whatever number here that we wanted, and we could get an actual, digit for our digits for the answer. But the pattern here is that if you've got one something and you've got something divided by it, you're basically taking, multiplying that by whatever you have as your dividend, whatever is in your denominator. So what are these? 8 divided by 1/4? Yep, 32. 12 divided by 1/5? 60. A divided by 1/2? A times 2, isn't it? Again, there are 2 1/2s in a whole. A is what we have for our wholes here. So we take the A times the 2 that we would take for each one. What about this one? A divided by 1b. Yeah, it's A times B, isn't it? Yeah, this is getting into more of the algebraic kind of expressions that we'll talk about later, but that's horrible. And that's what the point of this is helping you to connect how these letters can represent any number, but it's still going to be the same thing as far as how it works out. What about doing by non-unit fractions? It's actually not too bad. So to find 6 divided by 2/3, Elena began by drawing her diagram the same way she did for 6 divided by 1/3. And then using that, she could have gone through and counted each of them, right? Well, to find 6 divided by 2/3, she took the value of 6 divided by 1/3 and then multiplied it by 1/2 or divided by 2. Why? Okay, here's why. Because look, what it's saying here is that 6 divided by 1/3 does give you the answer here, right? Because 6 divided by 1/3 is going to give us 18, right? She says that you either multiply it by 1/2 or divide it by 2. Why? Because we're going to make that into groups of 2 because we need 2/3, right? So if I physically go through and draw all these out, I make 9 groups of 2/3, right? So that's why you have to divide this in half, because we've got, this is just 1/3. We need to group those in 2. So we need to make groups of 2. So how many groups of 2 1/3s can I make here? 9. So you can still use what we just talked about with all the unit fractions, but then you can use that numerator to figure out what you need to do next to make it work correctly. Let's try some more. So I have 6 divided by 3/4. Okay, so what would be 6 divided by 1/4? Yeah, that would be 24, right? But that's not the answer here. What's the answer? 8. Why is it 8? Well, to make 3/4, I need 3 of these groups, right? So I only need 1/3 of the 24, or I need to take that 24 and break it up into groups of 3 1/4, which is how it gives me 8. What about here? 6 divided by 4/3. Well, what is 6 divided by 1/3? Yeah, going to give us 18, right? Because there are 3 1/3 in each one. Now what do we need to do? Yeah, we're talking about groups of 4 of those thirds. So 4 will go into that 4 whole times, leaving you with a remainder of 2 2/4, or 4 1/2. Does that really work out? We'll look at it. There's 1/4. Hang on. Okay, there's 4 1/3. Here's another 4 1/3. There's another 4 1/3. And there's another 4 1/3. I have 4 groups of 4/3. And then I have 2 of the 4 I need. And that's how it ends up being 1/2. What about here? 4 divided by 4/6, or 6 divided by 4/6. Well, 6 divided by the 1/6 gets us 36, right? We need groups of 4 of that, so we have to divide it by 4, which gets us our 9. Again, we can go through and we can make groups of 4 all the way through here and see that we're going to make 9. All right, so Elena, study your diagrams, notice that she always took the same 2 steps to represent the division of a fraction in a tape diagram. First step was to partition each whole into as many parts as the denominator. So like with a 6 divided by 3/4, she cut that into 4 parts, so then she had her fourths. Then her next step was to put a certain number of those parts in one group, and that is told to you by the numerator. So she would put 3 of the 1/4 in the group, and then that way she knew how many 3/4 are in 6. So which of these is going to end up doing that for us? Isn't this it? Because think about it. You have to find out how many 1/4 are in 6 based on what she said here, right? So that would tell you that there are 24 1/4 in that 6. And then you have to find out how many groups of 3 you could make out of that, which is why you then divide by 3. So what do you get if you take 6 divided by 2/7? Well, 6 times 7 gets you 42, divided by 2 gets you 21. 6 divided by 3/10? 20, right? Because you'd have 6 times 10, which is 60, divided by 3 is 20. 6 divided by 6/25. You get 25, right? Because 6 times 25 is 150. Well, we just said that's 150. 150 divided by 6 is 25. So what do we find out about dividing by a unit fraction? We notice that by dividing by a unit fraction, we're actually end up multiplying because we're thinking of how many parts of that, let's say 1/2, in 6 divided by 1/2, how many 1/2s are in each whole. And then when we divided by non-unit fractions, it was similar in that we looked at the number of the denominator as how many parts we made total, and then use the numerator to help us figure out the total that we had of those groups of that denominator. So we are just past that 15-minute mark. I apologize for that, but thank you so much for staying in with me, and thanks for watching. Yes, thanks for watching.